This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Sunset Safari, coming to you live from Djuma, private game reserve in the Sabi Sands, where we have got a wonderful herd of impala. I'm not sure if they've gone to drink or if they're on the way. I think maybe they're on the way back. But what a splendid afternoon it's turning out to be. There is lots of clouds on the horizon, and well, this afternoon, Mpo and I are going to be searching the watering holes just to see what's going on, what's happening, who's moving about, and then we'll take it from there as we go. Not only ourselves, it's also Tristan, who's out with Theo. We got Tess with Sebastian out in Ngala, Moritz and Craig out in Tsalu, Kalahari, and Taylor and Gerrit in Pridelands, as well as Matt and Glenn out in and beyond Punda. And we welcome you on board your live African safari. Hello again and welcome everybody to the Sunset Safari, coming to you live from Djuma Private Game Reserve, where our impalas are getting a little bit spooked in the wind. You never know, there might be something around, something might have passed earlier. Hello everybody, my name is Steve Holden, we're joined by Mpo on camera, and as always, we are delighted to have you with us on this afternoon safari, where you never know what might come about. So it is a lovely 30 degrees Celsius. 86 degrees Fahrenheit, and if you have any questions, please send them through to #WildEarth on Twitter, at FC on the YouTube channel, and if you're under the age of 18, please ask your parents or guardians to send the questions through via email to kidsequestions@wildearth.tv. Remember to go and register on the Wild Earth website, head over to the live safari page, and you could submit your questions directly there. Don't forget, everybody, as well, we got a bit of a drive this week with regards to solace in nature. Finding solace. How have you managed to find solace? How have you managed to create a space for yourselves in these difficult times? What have you done personally or with your family or friends to sort of regain a little bit of peace in your life away from the fear and anxiety that's gripping the world at the moment? Have you been sitting in nature? Have you been walking? Have you been, whatever it is you've been doing, we'd love to get some videos, horizontal videos of whatever you've been doing with you, talking and telling us what you've been doing and how it's been making you feel, because nature has a way of connecting people, and possibly some of you are going to make everybody have a bit of a giggle in these tough times, which I think is vitally important. So please go ahead and send through those videos to #WildEarth on Twitter, Wild Earth Live on Facebook, and Wild Earth Official on Instagram. We'd love to put those together, and at some point put together a video encompassing all of your delightful tales and stories to help everybody during these tough times. Okay, well, it is very important, I think, everybody, that this time, more than any other time that we can remember in human history, to stand together, to help each other, not to isolate ourselves from each other's problems, but to help where we can. Friends, family, colleagues. When we talk about support networks, what is the purpose of a support network if after all of these years it suddenly collapses when it is most at need? Yes, the world has been going through some very interesting times, and well, we need to help each other out. We need to put aside differences, and we need to look towards the human society and the human culture. Now, how is it that we became human? Once upon a time, hunter-gatherers or whoever were walking along, and an individual fell and hurt themselves, and the first humane act was to help heal that person, not leave him behind for the wolves. And that is where the word humanity comes from. So let's embrace humanity while we send you over to Tess, who'd like to say good afternoon.
Good afternoon from a very warm and beyond Ngala this afternoon. So I am sitting here with the wild dogs that are still napping in the shade of the guarri trees in that beautiful big clearing where we found them this morning. My name is Tessa. I'm going to be your guide this afternoon on safari here at Beyond Ngala. Behind the camera we have Sebastian again today, and we are really hoping to stick with these wild dogs and see some action, but we're also hoping to follow Makoti male a little bit later and see if he's moved, because we haven't seen him in so long. But the wild dogs are really relaxing this afternoon. It has heated up considerably since this morning. It was nice and overcast. There was even some drizzle, and now we've got sunny blue skies. And it is incredibly warm, so I think these wild dogs are just trying to enjoy the shade until they build up some energy to go hunting a little bit later. So actually on the way here, we went through a clearing where there were quite a lot of impalas, and that's not too far from where we are. I'd say less than 500 meters as the crow flies from here to where those impalas are. And so I'm thinking that maybe a little bit later these wild dogs might get up and start moving. But you can see now they're just enjoying lying in that nice long green grass. So this is actually that male that has the broken ear, and behind him is one of the other males of the pack, and you can see him panting. His chest is moving quite a lot, trying to cool down in the shade. That particular male has quite beautiful markings. He's got a lot of white on him. So we do actually have the rest of the pack spread out around these two. They're in the long grass, and every now and then all we see is just a head poking up out of the grass. Occasionally they might hear something, or a tail flicking just like that one. So there in the background you can see some ears moving in the grass. But it's incredible how well they camouflage. If we did not know that these wild dogs were here, we would not see them by driving past. It's always a very special time when you get to sit with wild dogs in the quiet. Linda, yes, we are still with the wild dogs. When we have them close by like this, it's really, really nice for us to come and be able to see them as much as possible. And what's nice as well is it's different to the cats, because the cats, once they're sleeping, you know, a lion might sleep for 16 or 20 hours in a day. And although it looks like the dogs aren't doing much else, they're actually incredibly active as the sun starts to set a little bit. So every morning and every evening they're going to start moving. And we do have clouds building up in the far distance, so I think they are going to come rolling in. And then these sleeping wild dogs will wake up, and it'll be absolute mayhem. It's one of those things that I really love about wild dogs in particular, is how active and how social they are. Every time somebody wakes up, there's a commotion of greetings and squeaking and sniffing each other. And it's always a lot of fun to watch and experience. So for the time being, all they kind of do is when they start getting hot on one side, they might shift over and move to the other side, or turn onto their backs. Or they might actually get up and move to a different spot where the ground is cooler from the wind, where their body hasn't heated the ground. But these two are fairly old dogs in the pack. So these two tend to spend a little bit more time sleeping, where the pups might be a little bit more active a bit earlier on. But what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to stay here with them for a little bit longer and see if they maybe start getting active as the clouds roll in. And I'm going to send you over to Pinda for a warm greeting.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Beyond's Pinda Private Game Reserve, where, like Tess and her wild dogs, we're also waiting for a couple of cheetah, those 5 young cheetah, to come to life this afternoon. It is an extremely hot afternoon this afternoon, so I don't think they'll be doing much for the foreseeable future until it cools down a little bit later on, and maybe this wind dies down. Every so often one of them pops their heads up just to make sure the coast is clear. But for the most part, I can see 3 of their little heads fast asleep. Well, one of them's just lifted them now. It sounded like a zebra in the background making a little bit of a commotion. We've come down to the floodplain. My name is Matt Durrell, and behind the camera we've got Glenn. And yeah, we've come down to the floodplain. Grant let us know that he managed to find these 5 cheetah on the floodplain this morning. So we've come straight back and we've managed to find them. They've moved slightly further away from where they were last into a lovely little shady patch. And with this cool breeze that's blowing, quite a strong breeze at that, they are probably quite comfy in there. As soon as you venture out into the sun, it is extremely hot still. But here on the floodplain on our way in, we drove past several herds of wildebeest and zebra, and in amongst there were a couple of young zebra calves and foals running around as well, which, you know, could certainly be on the menu for 5 cheetah of this age. Ideally for them, they'd be looking to hunt things like impala and impala lambs this time of year, but those lambs are already a couple months old and starting to get bigger and stronger and keep up with the others, or at least the adults when they're running. So it certainly is a challenge for them to hunt, but you never know. Being 5 of them, they are able to chase things towards one another and catch things when they are hunting, but for now it looks like they're quite content in that little spot up on this embankment. And yeah, out here on the floodplain we keep hearing and seeing updates of that tropical storm that's heading our way, just gone over Madagascar. I think it's called Eloise, with gusts of wind up to 210 kilometers an hour. And from all the guys just sitting having a chat about it, the amount of rain that's expected, I think the one day was 140 mils of rain, which is quite frightening to imagine, but exactly what we need to fill up a couple of the dried up watering holes here where we are on the floodplain. This eventually leads into False Bay and then St. Lucia, which there are also some ridiculous photos that are doing the rounds on social media at the moment. There are crocodiles in the ocean and St. Lucia itself in the lake with small bull sharks that they've caught, bull shark pups that they've caught. There've been hippos in the ocean and then crocodiles swimming in the ocean as well as a massive crocodile head that someone posed with in a photo that washed up on the beach. So all sorts of things happening, and with rains like that we could very well have maybe not the crocodiles we already have in the rivers below on our border, but things like maybe the sharks venturing up here if there is significant rain enough to fill up these estuaries up to the floodplain where we are, and that will certainly convert what you see here around us. I'm going to stick around with these cheetah and see if they decide to move, but for now we're going to head off to Tristan.
Well, hopefully they will move at some point. What we're watching move is the tiniest terrapins I've seen in a very, very, very long time. These little guys are probably no bigger. In fact, I could probably fit 2 of them in the palm of my hand to give you an idea of how small they are. They are little. You can see the size of the grains of sand in relation to their little shells and their heads as they pop up. They really aren't very big at all. Shame. There's a whole bunch of them inside here, so we're just going to have to go very, very, very slowly through this little puddle as we go, because there's a reason why we need to get through it, which I'll get into shortly. My name's Tristan. On camera I've got Theo this afternoon, and it's nice to have you all aboard in Djuma and, well, the various other locations in South Africa. Now, we're following tracks for what I'm hoping, fingers crossed, is Tlalamba from during the day today. She's walked... it looks like during this morning's game drive up this road. The tracks are really tricky to see at the moment. It's not easy at all, and luckily she's kind of staying on the road for now, but we're going to try and figure out where she's gone. There was also a young male track that was walking same time-ish. She's on top of that, but he was also moving around here, so I don't know if it's maybe that young male that Steve saw that's also in the area, But Steve's going to check parallel with me, and hopefully we'll be able to find Tlalamba. I know a lot of you have been asking about her. She's been very scarce of late, which could be for a number of reasons. Could be she's looking for mating rights. She could be already pregnant and is looking for den sites. We don't know these things. I mean, I haven't seen her in a month, so don't really know what she looks like at the moment. But if we can catch up with her, I'll be super, super happy. She's such a beautiful cat that any time to spend with her is good. But I'm just checking very carefully. So she walked here. If I show you guys, the sun makes it a little harder to see. With the shadow of the car, I can see it. But if you look straight over in that dark little piece of mud next to the water, you can see where she's walked. You can just make out the track from here. So in the little light patch there, go forward, up a little bit. That's too far. There's a little vagrant. Come down, sorry. Down. Right to the left a little bit. A little bit more. And there, straight into the middle of where your screen is. Down. There we go. You can hardly see them, but to the bottom left corner, and then the right of bottom left corner, you can see there's little holes there where the shadow is kind of moving. That's kind of roughly where they are. They're really difficult to see from this angle, unfortunately, with the sun. So that's what we're looking for as we're going, and it's proving to be near impossible in places. Hopefully, though, we'll eventually kind of pick her up somewhere here. You're right there. Theo, I think, just got a little fly in his mouth, which is never funny. Hopefully, because it got hot quite quickly, she's decided to lie down somewhere. But we also know with Tlalamba that she can be anywhere at any time. Now, why I think it's Tlalamba is where we're going is this route that she takes pretty much all the time. She comes from sort of camp / quarantine area, and she just goes beeline straight to Buffelshoek and walks straight up this road. Shadulu doesn't really come up this way. We know Tandi these days doesn't, and we know that Tandi's all the way down at Chitwa, or was down at Chitwa, so it would be a big surprise if she came this side. I'm just trying to see if I can still see her tracks. I think I just saw them. Yeah, there they are. They're still going. Now, because of the rain this morning, it's actually helping me on this road. So I'm hoping that where she keeps walking is actually where no one has driven, because her track as I'm driving, I'm not actually looking for the toes in the back of the pad as we're driving at the moment. I'm looking for a slight shine on the road surface. The road is very textured after the rain. It's got all the little droplets have left a very kind of rough surface, and where she's been standing and walking leaves a little soft sheen. It almost kind of looks as though somebody's come and with their finger and just polished that little section of the road. And so that's how I'm able to kind of follow it from the car rather than having to get off and walk all the way along. And in fact, actually walking on top of the tracks with the bright sunlight that we've got at the moment is harder than me just being in the car at this angle and just seeing that slight little shine on the road as it goes. It's not just very kind of distinct, but you can, once you start to see the pattern, you can kind of figure it out as it goes. All right, I'm going to try and follow these tracks, see where they go. We're right up near Buffelshoek's boundary already. I'm pretty sure these are going to cross in that side. Hopefully she's not too far from here.
Our first Wild Earth Explorers competition has closed, and we have a winner. Congratulations to Chantal Sleep from Benoni in South Africa.
I felt totally overwhelmed for winning this prize. I will be taking my son with me, and I can't wait to share this experience with him.
Chantal and her son have won a behind-the-scenes Wild Earth experience at the magnificent and beyond Ngala Tented Safari Camp. The prize includes a 3-night stay and a chance to sleep out in the unique Ngala treehouse.
I would like to thank Wild Earth for making this dream come true, and I encourage everybody to subscribe, to become an explorer, and stand the chance to win these amazing prizes, and so much more.
For this month, we have a brand new prize. You could be jetting off to Tualu in the Kalahari for a 3-night stay at the luxurious Motsi Lodge. Open to all Wild Earth explorers who have signed up before the end of January 2021. Terms and conditions apply.
This is Rusty. He's my favorite vehicle and we've been through all the good times here in the bush. Now, if you feel a connection to Djuma Game Reserve like I do, then we have a fantastic opportunity for you. You can have your name engraved on a brushed metal plaque just like this one, and we will attach it to Rusty so you can always be with us on safari in spirit. We will even send you a digital photograph once your plaque is mounted on Rusty. Spaces are limited, so grab your spot now. Africa is very special, and when you come down here, even when you're watching through our camera, the landscapes change from desert to bushveld to up in the Masai Mara where there's grassland. That means that the biodiversity changes as we move along Africa. And what I love most about connecting with you guys is the fact that I get to share these wonderful experiences with thousands of people.
Catch up with the guides daily here on Wild Earth.
Well, welcome back to Djuma, everybody, where Tristan and I have been chatting. I searched what I thought was almost every road of the property this morning on Djuma. Couldn't find a leopard track, and he goes out onto Gallagher Shortcut and finds 2 leopard tracks, male and a female. So just giving him a hand, checking. We were going to check the water points anyway, so we're checking Gallagher Pan now after Vuyatela Dam. Some old lion tracks over there. Telematis came in here the other day. Walked straight through, probably drank a Gallagher, ended up in quarantine. We tracked them all the way down to the south. But sometimes that can make life difficult. Pride of Lion tracks in amongst looking for a young male leopard. But ideally he would have been going the other way. But the sun is coming through the clouds, or has broken through the clouds, and it is the UV index feels very, very warm. Okay, so this is Gallagher Pan. You can imagine that if there was a leopard sitting here, it would be in the shade. Jesse, leopard would definitely at this time of day be in the shade somewhere, but you know, Tristan's been telling me on the radio that by the way the tracks of the female he's following are moving, she's been moving in the day. So it's not impossible for a leopard to move. I mean, it was cloudy for quite a bit of this morning, but this pan is very exposed. So if he was around here, he would be in the drainage line in the shade, and to find him now just by random visual sight is going to be very hard. So hopefully we'll be able to pick up on some tracks of him. It's a young male. It's probably the same male I saw on the dam wall a couple of days ago that baboon chased away. Okay, let's get moving aboard. The sun sitting in one place is very warm. Keep going. You need high factor sun cream in these kind of days. We'll see what we can do. We'll have a look around. Maybe we'll be lucky. Tristan's on tracks. He's found tracks. So I'm just covering some ground to assist in maybe cutting something else that the male and female were walking together apparently, and they split. Maybe they weren't walking together, but just he was following her. And maybe it's Kalamba, who we haven't seen in ages. She must be becoming mating ready. And won't that be interesting? Little Princess Kalamba ascending to the royal throne herself. Well, talking about cats, Matt and Pinda, and beyond Pinda, he's caught up with his cheetah.
Welcome back to Pinda, everybody. Can still see these cheetah in and out of consciousness here on the floodplain. Still far too hot for them to be hunting, although they're starting to show signs of getting up and active. That little bit of grooming that you see, and maybe some yawning, although I don't think they'll move from where they are now because it is really hot in the sun. Big old yawn, maybe. Maybe though, I'm sure they know that other predators, lions and leopards in heat like this will still be fast asleep. So not a bad time, and definitely a time that you'd see a cheetah mother moving with the youngsters is in heat like this, because she knows very well that other predators will be fast asleep. So not a bad time to cash in, but yeah, that cheetah, contrary to what the yawning and grooming does, has just put its head straight back down. In fact, you can see that very white underneath of its chin quite nicely now as it lies like that. Wonder where the other two are. I can see 3 heads, maybe 4 heads, and then the 5th must be tucked away a little bit further away. Ainsley, you're asking if amongst the 5 cheetah there'd be a leader. There more than likely will be a dominant cheetah out of the 5 of them, maybe one that gets up first and sort of leads them on to the next part of where they need to go, or the hunt sort of takes initiative of getting up and moving in that direction of potential food. You might find that one to be the more dominant. And obviously there'll be a pecking order when it comes to food, that some will eat, being the 5 of them, quite a few mouths to feed. If they catch something small, they'd fight for the spots to get the best feeding. So absolutely, Ainsley, in amongst the slot there will be somewhat of a hierarchy in amongst them. But for the most part, they all get along really well. And they'll still be together for quite some time. They are only 9-10 months old now, and are only really independent at around 18 months to 2 years old. But we're starting to see quite a bit of movement. They've got quite a nice vantage point from where they are, looking back over the floodplain, where a couple of zebra off in the distance, and further back, which we won't be able to see now, but up on the other side were some wildebeest and their calves, which I'm quite certain that they can see from there. But it's like a little hideout that they've got with little gaps that they can see through and all around them for their next potential meal. I don't think in heat like this that they'd set off to hunt. Not the most ideal conditions, and they obviously get very tired very quickly running at those high speeds. So we'd rather wait for the afternoon when it's a little bit cooler. Just every so often lifting their heads to see what's about there. A couple of zebra walking past in the distance that they might have noticed. Maybe some warthog. But once they're happy that everything's good and safe, they put their heads straight back down. But definitely worth seeing what they get up to later on in the afternoon when it cools down a little bit more. It is still really hot out here this afternoon. You can see that zebra walking off in the distance in front of us. There's something like a zebra that's gotten the attention of this cheetah. This cheetah's now sitting up. If it carries on up and around here, luckily for the cheetah, the wind's in their favour, but they could very well chase them. But we're going to head off to Steve, see what Steve's got.
Welcome back to Djuma, everybody. We've got a bird of prey once again, as we had this morning. This time a starling is going to be the brave one to shoo him away. It's the African harrier hawk. You can see the featherless legs. Can't really make out the coloration in this light. The sun is almost behind him. There we go. Starlings are all. There we go. There's a fork-tailed drongo. Aren't they brave characters, these birds? But some people will suggest that the African harrier hawk, which is a bird or nest raiding specialist, actually flies low, like just above the canopy, to attract these birds, hole nesting cavity birds such as the starlings and the like, because then he knows, there must be a nest nearby, and then will actually pay attention to where the nest is. So he attracts the attention of the birds, and the more vigorous the birds are, the closer to the nest he feels he might be. And that's the fork-tailed drongo with all of the guts in the world. It's called mobbing behavior, everybody. Birds of prey get by being still. There's a kingfisher now, even. Another hole nesting bird. Clearly, this dead tree has got a few cavities in it. Not the drongo. The drongo wouldn't be nesting a cavity. It'd be nesting in a little cup nest hidden in a tree. A cavity nest meaning old woodpecker burrows or holes in trees. And so the mobbing behavior is to basically tell the predator you've been spotted and your stealthiness has been thwarted. Kelly, a smart bird, you reckon? Well, that's what people think, you know. Right now he's gained the attention of an enormous amount of birds. They've all come to shoo him away. And so often predators, including cats, once they've been spotted, they've lost that edge and off they'll go. But the harrier hawk doesn't conceal his appearance at all. He flies laboriously through the sky. Very characteristic flap, flap, glide, flap, flap, glide. And then once detecting where he needs to be, he can actually climb up the tree, holding on with wings, holding on very acrobatically on the tree, while a leg finds holes and cavities to probe inside of. So, always very interesting to see. And it's always the fork-tailed drongo. He's going through a bit of a molt there. You can see his new tail feathers coming through. Always the forky. He's got the guts to really give it to these big birds. It's not looking too concerned, though, the African harrier hawk, is it? James, you'd think so, but, you know, while standing there, he's not very agile. He could bite at them, but they're very quick. He's not as agile as they are. He's quite a slow-moving bird, but yes, of course, there's risk. There's risk. But the African harrier hawk isn't an aerial hunter. It's a nest prober. So many of the other birds of prey that we see, such as goshawks and sparrowhawks, even the tawny eagle, they're very, very good at catching and attacking things in the air, using their body and their strength and their talons and their speed. Where this bird's got a different strategy altogether. It knows. Almost looks like it's shaking with excitement right now. Almost looks like it's shaking with anticipation for what's going to happen, and now might even start to climb up and down the tree, looking for the telltale signs of a cavity. So it'd be interesting to see. Alison, definitely the harrier hawk is bigger than the sparrowhawk. Sparrowhawks in general are quite small. I'll get some dimensions for you now. You get sparrowhawks, then you get goshawks, and then you get harrier hawks, or hawks in general. But harriers, the reason why this is called a harrier hawk is because the way it flies is very harrier-like. Harriers have got very broad wings for helping them to coast along sort of open grasslands or marsh areas or wetlands, and it requires very little energy for them to fly. It's a very typical flap, glide. I'll have a look for you now, though. Okay, so the African harrier hawk is 63 centimeters long, 750 grams, which is not very big, is it? Now, let me try and find you. Problem is, they're not all on the same page, so I'm going to have to just search for you. Sparrow hawks are much smaller. Little sparrowhawk is the smallest. As the name suggests, it's only 25 centimeters, 74 grams. So there's an entire 700 grams there in difference. So very, very different size altogether. But the sparrowhawks and goshawks are all about maneuverability and speed. Most of them pursue their prey through the air. High pace chasing. The goshawk, the shikra, African goshawk, 45 centimeters, 360 grams. So that's a bit bigger, quite a bit bigger. The African goshawks. You see, it goes from sparrowhawk to goshawk to hawk. And then we don't really have too many true hawks in South Africa. The hawk eagle, which is 1.6 kilograms, the African hawk eagle. James, this is your favorite raptor. Okay, it's a very sneaky little fellow, isn't it? He's just, all the attention. Look at all the attention he's gained for himself. Now, looks like he wants to start climbing the tree. Come on, show us how you climb. Starlings are watching him closely. There's not another dead tree for quite some distance. It's possible that there might be some breeding nests in this tree itself. It's known as a habitat tree. You see on the left there, birds have landed just on the left stalk. You can just see a tail sticking out. There we go. Another bird's gone to it. There could be cavities there that this bird's trying to figure out. And they're very good at climbing. It's quite something to see a bird holding on to a tree stump with its wings. As it sort of moves its leg, it's able to sort of turn and twist its leg or ankle or knee joint, whatever you want to call it. Look at all the birds now. Come on, let's all get him at the same time. Oh, here comes the helmet shrikes now. The Retz's helmet shrikes are bombing him en masse. Pan out just zoom out just slightly and you'll see all of them. Bang, bang, bang. Oh, he's definitely gotten all the attention, hasn't he? You know, when you're trying to find out whether you're in the right area, this bird has figured out he's definitely in the right area. Everybody going, but no one really committing. Bryony, we don't really like to compare those sort of things. We talk about intelligence. There's so much natural intelligence in nature, so much instinct. What's going on right now is the defense of one's nest, which is an instinctive trait. These birds all know that they've got to chase away the predator, and they're putting themselves on the line. So that's got nothing to do with intelligence. That's completely a driver for defense of the chicks. Putting one's life at risk, I think it requires no intelligence at all there. That's just a natural instinct that kicks in. But this bird's learned behavior, the hawk's learned behavior, African harrier hawk's learned behavior, is to try and figure out where the nests are. Many of the nests are very camouflaged and almost impossible to find. So how do you find? But by presenting yourself. And I think that is a nice strategy. But he has to still get past all of these watchful eyes and beaks. Most birds do have the potential to hurt each other. You don't often see it happening, but they do have the potential to irritate at least. And if we had the right light now, I bet you the African hawk eagle's face would be bloodshot red right now. It's hard to see it in this light. When he gets excited in breeding season, the yellow face goes red. And when he gets irritated like this, it'll also go red. And if you can hear the clicking sounds of the Retz's helmet sharks there. A beautiful blue sky behind is about to be overwhelmed by some cloud. Well, Sharon, I don't actually know what the exact difference is between a hawk and an eagle, but what I do know is that eagles, or true eagles, have got feathers all the way down to the foot, all the way down their leg, and possibly hawks don't. When we look at all the sparrow hawks, the goshawks, none of them have got feathers on the legs, a harrier hawk, but a true hawk, we don't really have any true hawks. So that's the definition of an eagle. A true eagle has got feathers all the way down to the foot. Eagles are also generally a little bit bigger. And why the feathers all the way on the foot for true eagles? It's hard to say. It's hard to say how that has come about. And the starlings are back. But there's definitely an enormous amount of temperature regulation that takes place on legs. Snake eagles have no feathers on the legs either, and that's due to most likely the fact that they deal with snakes, and hence to have feathers on the legs would require a blood capillary network to the surface, to the skin, because feathers work almost like hairs in a way. They need a network of veins and capillaries, and so to have them, you would have the potential of being envenomated if being bitten on the leg. So snake eagles don't have, and maybe many hawks and the like don't have either, due to their potential for feeding on snakes as well. There's nothing to stop large eagles from feeding on snakes, but their killing strategies are normally one of very powerful pressure of the talons behind the neck or on the spine. So maybe they're not too concerned with being bitten. Okay, well, we're going to move on from our activity here and see if we can give Tristan a little bit more hand with those tracks.
From that formerly known as a gymnogene back to these lines, there was quite a bit of commotion now with what sounded like crown lapwings, or crown plovers as they were once known, behind us, and something like a marsh harrier archer could very well have been disturbing them. They're very protective over their eggs, those lapwings. Not sure if, for those of you that play golf back home, you know those lapwings that attack you if your golf ball lands anywhere near them, caused quite a stir behind us. And it had all 5 of these cheetah with their heads up, just looking in that, peering off in that direction to see what it was. But once they saw it was a bird of prey and not a threat to them, they've all settled back down again. Still really hot, still with a bit of a breeze blowing. I think they're quite happy in the shade of that quarry tree that you see them in now. We've had the most beautiful bee-eater, the blue-cheeked bee-eater fly over us. It's such a lovely view. I thought it was going to land. There's a stump in front of us. Thought it was going to land there, but it didn't. It carried on. Very, very liquid call that it has as well. The cheetah didn't acknowledge it. They were all fast asleep when it flew overhead. But what I might do is carry on. I'll leave these cheetah in peace and maybe return a little bit later to see if they're on a little bit active when it's cooler. See if we can't find something else this afternoon. Go back to that area that Grant was in this morning and perhaps that leopard shows its face.
And that's how it goes. I'm so excited because we've tracked her so far and we've managed to find the little princess sitting beautifully in a tree for us. She's taking it very easy. To give you an idea of how far we've come from Djuma almost, I don't even know how far into Buffelshoek now, and she was going up and down, around and about. Her tracks were all over the place, and then she kind of got driven over by a car in places, so it was tricky to see where her tracks were going, and kind of followed on foot for a long time, and then eventually spotted her in the tree up ahead, which is really, really cool. And she's got those piercing, beautiful eyes as only Tlalamba can have. It's a pity there's these little sticks in front of her face for now, but that's okay. We might reposition slightly. You know what? I think let's reposition, because I've seen there's another gap here that might work a little bit better. But I'm super excited that we're going to get to spend some time with her. Unfortunately, if she does come down the tree, it's going to be a bit tricky, because where we are is right on the edge of our signal range, to the sort of northwest of Buffelshoek. Are you going to watch us from there? That's actually world class, because I would rather you watched us from there. I'm just going to straighten us out so that it's not back-breaking work for Theo on the back. There we go. And you can see the telltale giveaway already from that shot there, is that little tail hanging down. So that's what I spotted first, was just the tail. Luckily, she's facing the opposite direction from where I was walking, because otherwise she might have come down the tree and disappeared in this long grass. But at least, like I said, we found her and she looks fairly comfortable. It's still very warm at the moment, so I don't think we're going to see little Tlalamba coming down anytime soon. She also looks like she's got a very full belly. Her tummy is full, if you look at that. Full or full of cubs? I wonder. It could be cool if she's pregnant. That would be awesome. I mean, we wouldn't know, because we haven't seen her mating. There's no kill in this tree that I can see. I'm just scanning around, and given how far she's walked, I doubt that there is a kill here. She's come, like I say, all the way from basically Djuma's camp into Buffelshoek. So it's not like she's kind of just been milling about this area. If she had a kill, that's what we would notice, is her tracks would be very localized to around this tree, whereas she's traveled quite a distance. So if she did have a kill, it was on Djuma the last few days, and we just didn't find it, which is par for the course when you get the rains like we've had. Or, like I say, she's mated in secret, and that's why she's been a bit elusive of late. It's going to be really fascinating to watch. At least we now know where she is and where she's hanging around and kind of what routes she's taking. And that's going to help massively for us in being able to keep tabs on kind of where she is. I often say this when we come back to work after being away for a little bit, it really does take us a little bit of time to just get the patterns going again. While overall they're pretty similar, sometimes, kind of month apart, they can start to utilize different roads. Maybe another female's pushing another male and can just slightly alter what they're doing and where they're walking. So, for example, Tandi's a great one for this, because when I was here a month ago, she was always around Torchwood Camp. A month later, and she's just pretty much on Chitwa 90% of her time at the moment. So it just kind of takes a little bit of time just to figure out the patterns of each individual leopard, and to be able to then work out where they're walking. Well, once you've got an idea of the areas that they're occupying, that then makes life so much easier in terms of being able to find them and just monitor them a little bit more. And of course, if she is pregnant, which, like I say, is really difficult from this angle, you can't tell whether she is or not, then we need to keep tabs on her more kind of regularly than before, because I'm kind of in two minds about where she's going to den. She's either going to den kind of central Djuma or deep in Djuma, or I think she might even give birth here in Buffelshoek. I think she's found it's quieter from a hyena's perspective up this side, and she's spending a lot of time up in this northern sector. So we'll just have to see how that influences her potentially kind of denning and what she feels in terms of denning. All right, well, we're going to stay with her for the afternoon. I'm sure we're going to have a wonderful sighting. And while we do that, let's send you across to some hyenas at Ngala.
Welcome back to And Beyond Ngala, everybody, going from one predator to another. We have found a spotted hyena that is chewing a very smelly carcass. And it looks almost like a tortoise shell. It's quite rounded. We haven't had a very clear view of it yet. And this is a young male spotted hyena. It's busy trying to spit a piece out there. Readjust it in the mouth. And it's so unusual for a hyena to be in full sun in this heat at this time of the day. And so we thought, as soon as we saw it, it must be eating something if it's out in the open. And sure enough, here it is chewing. So you can see it's still a fairly young hyena by how dark the spots are, but also by how light that mane is down the back of the neck. And it's definitely not got a full stomach, so it's no wonder that it is busy eating. You can see there it's quite flat, some longer hairs on the belly. And such a beautiful coat. No scarring or anything on the body, just one or two on the neck and the face. And you can hear that crunching. Wow, look at that. See how it's actually standing on it with its paw to break off bits of that bone. So hyenas are one of the few things that will actually eat through majority of the bones on a carcass. It's a very high calcium intake. And they've got such a strong jaw, specifically designed to get through all of these bones, and the teeth are also incredibly strong. And they're one of the very few animals that can actually cleanly break through a tortoise shell. Interestingly enough, the only bird that seems to be able to do it is the southern ground hornbill. Wow, that crunching. So we're not sure if this hyena found this carcass or if it actually, killed it itself. But with the jaw so strong, it very well could have killed this itself. It definitely looks like a tortoise, and by the size of it, I would say a leopard tortoise, which is fairly large. And there's actually a lot of good meat if you can break through the shell of a leopard tortoise, because the entire inside of that shell is the tortoise's body with all of the organs. It's heard something. And I compare those ears to the wild dogs that we saw earlier. Much shorter and rounder. There's an impala in the background. I think that's what it's heard. Oh, there's another one. So there's actually a herd there, but the impalas are not very worried about this hyena because it's in the open, it's in plain sight, and it's already occupied. So you can see it's looking over, but it's not alarm calling, it's not running away. And that impala can hear the crunching just as much as you and I can. Jerome, it is a very good-looking hyena. He's quite a handsome boy, especially because he is still young. His coat is still nice and fluffy and clean, and very vivid spots. In some older hyenas, those spots start to fade. that impala's just alarm called for the first time. And I think it actually wasn't the hyena that spooked it. There are some elephants that we can hear rumbling and causing a bit of a ruckus in the background. And I think that combined with the hyena in front of them was enough to make them a bit more nervous. Chad, I have seen hyenas hunt for themselves. They are very similar to the wild dogs in the way that they hunt. They'll work together as a clan, and they'll outrun something because they have more stamina. Can you hear the elephants? They have a lot more stamina, and so they keep running until the animal can't run anymore. What they do is they bite on and rip pieces off until the animal dies. And I've seen them hunting kudus. I've seen them hunting nyalas and bushbuck, impalas as well. And just memorable for me was I saw 8 hyenas that actually killed a 3-year-old female rhino. And that was a very intense experience. You can imagine how big a rhino is. And the hyenas managed to corner her in a section where she couldn't get out because the bush was very thick behind her. And it's amazing, now that hyena's had enough food, now it's decided it's time to go. It's actually moving directly towards where we could hear those elephants in the background. And I think it's probably going there to investigate whether the elephants have been upset by signs. We know that those Birmingham sub-adults that we saw yesterday on Drive, they have been in this area. I saw their tracks here this morning, but we didn't manage to find them. So maybe they might be around, and maybe that's why the hyena was actually here in the first place, and just being opportunistic happened upon that carcass. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep going, see if we can maybe bump into those Birmingham sub-adults or those elephants, and I'll send you over to Pinda in the meantime.
Welcome back, everybody. I know I spoke about those big herds of wildebeest a little bit earlier on, and we've come just on the other side of where those cheetah are to that herd of wildebeest. The one on the left-hand side, one of the adults, is just laid down flat on its side, but now it's up again. And you can see dotted in amongst them are those really light-coloured calves in and amongst the adults. A couple of them lying together in the middle, a couple of them standing, 1 or 2 suckling out here in the open. Looks like a different species altogether. In fact, the tracker that I was driving with the other day, we saw a herd of them running with their youngsters, and he said, look, some wildebeest and impala obviously making a joke, which everyone quite enjoyed at the time, and I did too, but they are completely different in colour, and they are so much more camouflaged than the adults as you see them lying down there, which is, you know, part of the reason as to why they are a different colour. And you might find that with a couple of different antelope species as well. I know sable are the same, and you might find several others, but almost always really big herds of zebra and wildebeest out here on the floodplain. Just looking around, every so often we see things like warthog out here as well. When the weather starts changing, as you heard me speaking about that tropical storm that's on its way here, Eloise, when that starts arriving, we might see the herds of elephants out here in the open. When it changes and it starts raining, they tend to head down south. The grass is down in the south, being a little bit more nutrient rich from the runoff from the minerals in the mountains, and that, you can imagine, is quite a sight emerging from those thicker areas at the back behind these wildebeest. And they always just keep coming, and I don't know for what reason, but when they cross these open areas, they always hightail it, literally just put their tails out, their heads down, and they run across the open to get to the other side, which is quite a spectacle. So maybe in the next couple of days you might see that on TV, and that is a treat. Go trumpet, and they literally go berserk as they run over. Smiley, you're asking why these animals, I think if I heard you correctly, do not need shade. There is quite a nice cool breeze blowing this afternoon, which is probably for the most part while they are out in the open. You can see like those cheetah are also lying down, some of them are still have their heads down grazing. But a steady breeze blowing, which is keeping them quite cool. So no real need for them to hide in the shady areas. Out in the open, they obviously can see things like those cheetah coming from a distance and head to safety in due course as well. So yeah, I think this strong breeze or cool breeze is what's allowing them to be out in the open. For 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it's still hot. I'd say around 30 odd degrees, maybe a little bit more, between 30 and 35 degrees here. And yeah, maybe earlier on this afternoon during the heat of the day, 12, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock is when they would have been tucked away, maybe in the areas behind us that are a little bit more sheltered. But for the most part, every so often a couple of them are lying down and hunkering down. And then when it starts to cool off in the afternoons, that's when you'll see them come out into the open, as you will with most animals. And that's when you'll see predators as well. If it does get cooler on, or cooler earlier on, with a bit of cloud cover like we've got today, maybe you'll start to see leopards and lions a little bit more active. Maybe the cheetah decide to move earlier than they would normally if it's cooler. But it is actually a very pleasant breeze blowing this afternoon. Maybe the beginning bits of that tropical storm that I speak about that's brewing. And if we do get the promised rain that they speak about, I've only ever seen this area in my time on Phinda completely underwater once, and that was in February 2018, where I think we had close to around 300 mils of rain in 5 days. And yeah, the storm promises to bring almost half of that in a day. And if that is the case, and if we get consistent rain, we could very well start to see this filling up. And together with that, the bird life, which would include things like black kukul out here on the floodplain, which is a special one to see, as well as maybe something that I haven't seen here on Phinda, but on the outskirts I have, is a rosy-throated longclaw, which is an amazing one to add for all you avid couch twitchers at home. This scene reminds me somewhat of East Africa as well, with all these wildebeest out in the open and relatively big skies above. But out there, yeah, a herd like this would be considered minute compared to some of the herds that you see there during the migration. Around 2 million strong up in East Africa, and a spectacle that I would one day love to see. And we heard it, I mean, when you have that many animals, you hear a couple of grunts and things like that. There was a youngster who was separated from its mom that we heard calling earlier. But I might carry on. I might see if we can't find a leopard here on Phinda and send you off to Tristan, who I believe has also just found a leopard.
Well, Matt, while you carry on, we are still with Tlalamba, and she's being a silly sausage. She's lying like an absolute clown. She's going to fall out of that tree now, because she's kind of half on her back, half on her side, and you know, you're going to fall like that. That is very unladylike the way you're sitting at the moment. Yes, you need to reposition yourself, because that's not going to work at all. She kind of was looking as though she was going to fall out of the tree for a second there. Okay, if that's how you want to lie, then you lie like that. That's still the youth in Tlalamba, is to kind of lie in this odd way. But there has to be few leopards out here that's as pretty as Tlalamba is. You know, she's developed into a nice sized leopardess. She's bulkier than what Tundi is, but she has the most beautiful piercing eyes, and this little pink nose, perfect kind of ears. She's as good looking a leopard as you could ever want to see. She really is pretty. I love the way her eyes kind of catch the light and how light they are against her coat. And if you compare her to Tundi's current cub, the difference in color of the coat is quite interesting. He's much, much, much lighter than she is. She's got a very orangey gold coat, and that only serves to enhance those light colored eyes. And you can see there's almost this kind of aqua blue sort of gray color coming through when the light hits them. Magnificent, isn't she? You can almost count the hairs on her nose from that shot. Super, super pretty. Oh, Tlalamba, you make us work hard to find you these days, don't you? Jeez. That's why I think I like her so much, is that there is definitely a reward in finding her, because it always takes time to find her, and you have to actually concentrate on looking for her in order to get lucky with her. I mean, every now and then we do just bump into her, but generally it's a task to find her and keep up with her. So I always like that kind of challenge. And then, of course, the fact that she looks the way she does, and that I always feel like I have a special little kind of thing with her, being the first person ever to have seen her in real life. Always makes me kind of think back to a very, very fond memory. Sheila, you say that beautiful, but with a grumpy face. She does have a little grumpy face. She inherited that from her mom. She has that stern stare that her mom gets. Luckily, what she hasn't inherited from her mom is showing her teeth and being a little bit snarly. She's, I don't think, ever snarled at anyone that I've seen, bar a hyena and Tingana from time to time. But otherwise, she's very mild-mannered in comparison to her mom. And she got Dad's relaxed side. She certainly has got Dad's sausage tummy at the moment, and Mom's grumpy face. Unfortunately, I actually forgot to talk about this morning. It's just so that everybody knows. I was talking yesterday about collecting scat samples, and we were talking about dads and things like that. Unfortunately, that project is now finished, so there's nobody doing that project anymore. So collecting the scat samples is not going to work. So unfortunately, from now on, all our cubs are going to be, again, just guessing mysteries rather than actual confirmed scientific knowledge. It's what happens sometimes. Projects can't run forever. It takes a lot of funding to run these things, and especially now more than ever, funding models need to go into on-the-ground conservation as opposed to nice-to-haves, which, genetic studies on the Sabi Sands leopards, I suppose in some ways is a nice-to-have when you compare it to poaching, snaring, and just protection of habitats. So you can kind of understand why that project has come to a close. Sad though, I was really hoping, because yesterday was a perfect day, because we got Sibui's female cub to defecate in front of us, as well as Tundi's cub, so we would have been able to collect both of those, which would have been really cool to figure out who's kind of mated. We suspect Mulawati for both of those, and given where Tundi and Sibui are hanging around, it would make sense. But you never really know as to who the males could be. You could just get a sneaky male that kind of slipped in there. What are you doing? That cannot be comfortable. I don't know, maybe she's just stopping flies going up her ears. But up there, she shouldn't be bothered too much. It's why leopards like to lie up in the trees at this time of the year. It gets out of the way of a lot of the flies that are hanging about and all the other things that are in the grass. Kyle, no, they don't. And actually, it's been a long time since I've seen this many leopards up trees, and it's all to do with the weather that we've had this summer. So, over the course of the last few years, we've had very dry conditions, which has meant shorter grass and less prolific grass. Whereas now, oh, you silly sausage, what are you doing? Between the paws and the tail and the head, it is the most ridiculous leopard sleeping in a tree I think I've seen in a very long time. She's all over the place. crazy. So, because of the drier conditions, the leopards were able to lie in the grass and be a lot more comfortable. But because we've had a very high rainfall, it's meant that the grass has grown very long and very thick. And that means that there's going to be a prolific amount of ticks, grass seeds, and all of that's very uncomfortable for these animals, as well as biting flies. So they go up the trees now because, one is it gets them out of the way of those biting flies. Generally, the higher you go, the less biting flies you find. There's a nice breeze up there, so it's not only shady and cool, but they're also out of the grass, which means they don't get huge amounts of tick loads on them. They're avoiding that parasite load that they'll get if they lay in the grass, because a lot of little tick nests in the grass, and if they lie on one of those, they can get absolutely hammered. And I don't know if some of you will remember this, but Tlalamba, when she was just left her mom, it was one of the kind of beginning times where we saw her on her own. She was absolutely covered in ticks on the back of her head. It was the first summer where we had decent rain since she had been born, and she just kind of had them all on the back of her neck, over her ears. And I think she's kind of learnt, as of many others, that trees are going to be much more comfortable at this time of the year from that, and much more manageable from a tick load perspective. And that's why we're seeing a lot more leopards up trees and on mounds at the moment. And thankfully, because if they didn't sit like this nowadays, we would struggle. I can tell you with 100% certainty, if she hadn't been up this tree, we wouldn't have found her this afternoon. Once they go off the road, the ability to track them, particularly at this time of the day, decreases almost 90%. In the mornings, it's different, because in the mornings, there's a bit of dew on the grass, and when they walk, they leave a very clear track through the grass, and the path you can see very clearly where they've gone. But in the afternoons, they walk and the grass kind of just springs back up, and you can't actually discern where they've gone, especially a light animal like a female leopard. And if they lie down in this, you'll stand on top of them before you see them. So it's great that they are sitting raised at the moment. It's really helping us. And on top of it, they're walking roads a lot more than they would normally. So she's not a big road walker. She's always one that likes to go through, bushes and things like that. But she walked, she's walking on roads a lot more, I've noticed, even since in December, just to stay out of this long grass as much as possible. The other thing with long grass is you don't know what's in it. So you can walk along here and there can be lions lying right in front of you. It's dangerous walking in long grass. So if they can avoid it, they will try their best to do that. So it's going to be a good summer, January, February, March, April for us, because we're going to see a lot more cats up trees, which obviously is great because it's the quintessential kind of leopard thing, but they're not as arboreal as everyone always thinks. All right, well, we'll sit with Tlalamba being absolutely ridiculous up her tree. In the meantime, though, let's send you across to Swali to say good afternoon.